Welcome in, everyone, to the It's Official podcast. Jeremy Plonk here from First Bet and Express Bet, flying the ship solo this week for my partner, Jeff Siegel. We've got 5 hot topics for you each and every Tuesday in horse racing. And, the Masters just finished on Sunday. So to use a little golf parlance, all the Kentucky Derby contenders are in the clubhouse. Their prep rounds are completed, waiting on the first Saturday of May. In fact, 10 of the 20 horses are already on the grounds at Churchill Downs, getting set for that run for the roses. We'll talk about that as one of our big topics this week. But we start things out here on the show each and every week in 2025 with the Goosebump Award. Which horse got us excited, got us out of our chair, got the goosebumps up on our arms? Well, he was all right for Caddyshack fans. Carl Spackler, dominant at Keeneland this past weekend. Let's go back and take a look.
Northern Invader, the leader, still leads it by a length and a half. A Silent Heart, his second outward from the rail, 3/4 of a length. Carl Spackler now picks up the chase, goes to the far outside. Is Fantastic again, looks to the inside. Integration still fifth, Trickery sixth, Grand Aspen last. Carl Spackler is moving on the outside, off the far turn. Carl Spackler coming forward for the lead. Northern Invader now second, Silent Heart third. Fantastic again is fourth toward the inside. Integration, then Trickery toward the outside. Carl Spackler, a widening 5-length lead. Integration is second. Trickery goes to third. The Maker's Mark Mile. It is all Carl Spackler and Flavian Pratt.
The Maker's Mark Mile was the third Grade 1 win for Carl Spackler, 5-year-old son of Lope de Vega. Certainly not over-raced, just 12 career starts. He's won 8 of them now. He won in the fall meet at Keeneland in Grade 1 company, of course, winning the Keeneland Turf Mile, and he won at Saratoga in Grade 1 company in the 4-star Dave. He's got that one blemish on his resume, 6th in the Breeders' Cup Mile last year at Del Mar. We shall see. Now, the worst races in his career, interestingly, all came in big event situations. Maybe crowds get to him a little bit. Derby Day at Churchill Downs, Belmont Day at Saratoga, and in the Breeders' Cup last year when he had that aforementioned 6th-place finish. So let's see if Carl Spackler can handle the big crowd when he goes back to Del Mar, hopefully, knock on wood, for this year's Breeders' Cup Mile. What a performance he had, though. It was the Goosebump Award, top performance in the land last week, and he went up against some star-studded runners to win that honor a week ago. That brings us to topic number 2, and the stars don't get any brighter in racing right now than Thorpedo Anna. She was back in action last week in the Apple Blossom at Oaklawn. She's now won both of her starts this year at age 4, but is she as good as she was a year ago? That's a real question mark. She was a winner this Saturday, but she wasn't dominant in the Apple Blossom. Let's go back and take a look.
No excuses here for Wild Bout Hillary. She's gotten a clear lead, but she's gone in a pretty good clip and hits the turn a half length in front. There goes Thorpedo Anna, though. Brian Hernandez Jr. lets her stride to the front, and she effortlessly goes by. Wild Bout Hillary second. Free Like a Girl trying to come on into the second position. She goes as Wild Bout Hillary weakens. Where's My Ring in the 3 path? As they come to the top of the lane, she's shaken up. Thorpedo Anna off the turn. Length and a half in front. Free Like a Girl trying to reel her in. Where's My Ring is third. Switching leads does Thorpedo Anna as she comes down the lane. 3 lengths ahead with a burst. Free Like a Girl is second. Where's My Ring is third with a 16th to go. Thorpedo Anna is now asked to finish, and she will. Wherever you may be, give a warm round of applause for the horse of the year, the champion, Thorpedo Anna. She's a class act, and she adds another Grade 1 win to the resume. Thorpedo Anna, an Apple Blossom champion. Free Like a Girl was second. Where's My Ring third. Neon Beach fourth.
Look, maybe we're punching at air here for a filly who's got 12 career starts, 10 wins, 2 second-place finishes. What are you cranky about? There's nothing to complain about with a resume like that. She's won 4 in a row. It's their second 4-race win streak of her career. The only loss in that mix on the bookend 4-race win streaks was a good second by a photo finish to fierceness in the Traverse Stakes. So she's had an unbelievable run here that includes what? Her last 8 starts, 7 Grade 1s, and then a Grade 2 in the Azaria in her return. But she hasn't dazzled on the clock. She hasn't dazzled necessarily in just kind of sheer dominance in her races so far this year. And I think it's fair to question, is she up there in that upper echelon of the elites of the 2000s and above? When you think about the Beholders, the Songbirds, the obviously Zenyatta. There's a good comparison with her. Zenyatta, of course, a 2-time winner of the Apple Blossom. 144.27, the time this weekend in the Apple Blossom for Thorpedo Anna. The slowest edition of that race since 1983. By comparison, Zenyatta went almost 2 seconds faster in 142.3 when she won one of her two editions of the Apple Blossom. So, look, she's looked good. She won the Breeders' Cup Distaff by 2.5. She won the Azeri by 3.5. And she won this one, the Apple Blossom, by 4.25. But the competition in the last two, we're not good at all. And then when you look back at the competition in this year's Breeders' Cup Distaff, it was a very light distaff. Remember, Idiomatic not making it back to defend her title in that race really took something away, I think, from the quality. But that happens in the distaff division over the years. You think about it, there's usually not 2-3 big superstars. It's a dominant older mare, and then is the 3-year-old filly good enough to knock off the dominant older mare? That seems to be the discussion when we get to the Breeders' Cup in the fall every year. Well, last year she was the 3-year-old, and with Idiomatic not making it to the Breeders' Cup, she was there and punched her ticket. Will she be good enough to beat the great 3-year-olds this fall if she gets to the Breeders' Cup Distaff? That'll be the question when we get that far down the line. And which 3-year-old might it be? Is it Good Cheer, who's going to be a big favorite for the Kentucky Oaks coming up in a few weeks? Could be, or somebody else could surface by the time we get to the fall. Now, as for Thorpedo Anna's campaign, a little bit curious here, to be honest with you. The Azeri Stakes as a prep for the Apple Blossom, okay, I get that. She probably could have run in the Apple Blossom off just training up to the year at 1 mile and 16th against the kind of competition she ended up facing. But they didn't know that going in, who would or wouldn't show up necessarily for the Apple Blossom. So the prep in the Azeri makes some sense. But now Kenny McPeak is saying they're going to wheel back 3 weeks later in the La Troyenne to run at Churchill Downs on Kentucky Derby weekend. I don't know if that's the best move in the world for long-term success. Is she fit now after 2 starts to take on better competition? Absolutely. But that's a quick turnaround for this filly, and she could face somebody like Cavalieri in from California for Bob Baffert. We'll see who shows up for the La Troyenne Stakes. And then even more curious in the potential campaign spots for her, if she runs in the race in June or in May here at Churchill Downs in the La Troyenne, McPeak has mentioned the Falmouth Stakes, maybe going to Newmarket in July 11th, the date of the Falmouth, to potentially run her on the turf on the world stage. I mean, it's sporting, it's bold, but after a little while, you start to see this pattern with McPeak over the last year, just he's running on all the big days with either Mystic Dan or Thorpedo Anna. That could be to put the Derby and Oaks winner and the Horse of the Year in the light of other fans and get to see them. Could also be a self-serving journey. It's hard to say what the goal is there, but like when you think about Mystic Dan, opening day at Santa Anita, then wheeling back in the Pegasus World Cup, you think of Thorpedo Anna trying to go international and run on Oaks Derby Day in the La Troyenne. These are things that I don't know necessarily fit these horses' schedules perfectly. Certainly the Falmouth would be a really big stretch if you want to say to go to Newmark and try the turf. Consider who's won the Falmouth the last 2 years: Porta Fortuna and Nashua. I mean, 2 of the best turf mares in the world. So you're not going to get an easy task going there. Could she be up to the challenge? Maybe. I don't think she's that kind of filly. Certainly first time on the turf would be a major, major challenge. If you go to England then with her and you run on Derby weekend, what do you got for the summer? Probably not a whole lot. Maybe she comes back once in the fall, spinster at Keeneland, then on to a Breeders' Cup. But it could be a very ambitious campaign for Thorpedo Anna. But after the 2 starts I've seen from her this year, I don't know that she's any better than she was last year to this point. She's got to have another big effort against much better horses for me to think that she's up to the level that maybe she was last year at the Travers. And that may have been her peak effort. She certainly regressed after the Travers and didn't run very well in the Cotillion. The Cotillion was another race that kind of stuffed in the schedule. I'm not sure she had the run. Like the classic horses, Sierra Leone, Fierceness, they just went from the Travers right to the Breeders' Cup. Why she came back after the Travers and then ran back in September, late September in the Cotillion, I don't know. I don't understand the campaign so much with her, but she's doing fabulous. How can you complain? Again, the results are there. 12 starts, 10 wins, 2 seconds. So quit complaining, I guess, and enjoy what we have, right? Don't be sour about everything. But if you want to talk about her amongst the greats of the last 10, 20 years, I think she's got to beat some better horses than she's faced. Quite honestly, she's had a pretty easy run of it outside of the Travers Stakes. So we shall see how she takes on these new challenges. Maybe the first one comes up on Derby weekend in the La Troyenne, because I think that field would certainly stack up better than what we saw in those 2 races at Oaklawn. Thorpedo Anna, is she still on the target? Not so much, but let's not be too over the top about it. She's still got the results to speak for. Speaking of results, it's hard to argue with the sprint success of trainer Steve Asmussen. He's won more races than anybody in the history of North American racing as a trainer, so we know he can win races. But his run with sprinters in the last decade or so has just been absolutely sensational. You go back to 2009 with Kodiak Cowboy winning the Eclipse Award, 2019 Matoli, 2021 Jackie's Warrior. You throw in horses like Justin Phillip, Echo Zulu, Gunite. There have been just some really good sprinters. Cogburn last year on the turf. And right now, Steve's got two in his barn that he's got to keep away from each other. We talk about the ones at Oaklawn last weekend that he won with on back-to-back days. On Friday, he brought back Skelly, the 6-year-old practical joke gelding, for his first start of the year because he had Booth running the next day in the Count Fleet. Skelly had won the Count Fleet the last 2 years in a row. Asmussen was going for a personal four-peat, and he could use a second teamer to do so. Let's go back and look at Skelly's return race. He looks as good as ever in his return bid in Allowance Company at Oaklawn.
At this point, Skelly showing no signs of slowing down. He's increased the lead to 7 coming to the quarter pole. The rest are well behind, and that's about all I have to say because Skelly is loose and cruising. He's in his own race. Skelly off the turn. Ricardo Santana Jr. sitting motionless aboard this guy here, and he comes down the lane with about an 8-length lead at least. Run Classic into second. But Oaklawn Park is Skelly's kingdom. Coming to the 16th pole, he's got a 6-length lead here and is not being asked for much. Skelly back to the winner's circle, back to the races, and back in fine style.
Yeah, the challenge was greater for Booth on Saturday, but he was up to the test in winning his 6th race in 10 lifetime starts. He's a 4-year-old son of Matoli, a second-generation star for Asmussen from the same line. And, of course, Matoli was a later bloomer. The resumes look eerily similar. Booth in victory. He had to work hard at Oaklawn, but he got it done.
Booth inside, Anarchist outside, and they're going at it as they hit the quarter pole. They're 5 ahead of Rivet. Payne in the 3rd position. They're off the turn. Booth, Anarchist, stride for stride. Booth digging down deep. Anarchist trying to get by him on the outside. Inside it's Booth. Outside it's Anarchist. And here comes down the center Tejano Twist, and also Rivet's getting involved here. Booth and Anarchist. They need to find more. Booth's finding more. Anarchist done. Rivet coming on late, but Booth's going to do it. Booth, a gold star in the Count Fleet. He took him the distance.
There are plenty of sprint opportunities to keep these horses separated from each other. You got to think some will be in Kentucky, some will be in New York. The Saratoga meet, definitely a place where you're going to see Booth or Skelly for the Vanderbilt this summer, and definitely horses that we want to look at towards the Breeders' Cup Sprint. You could see either one of those head to Southern California as well. Some good races at Del Mar, of course. You got the Bing Crosby out there, and you've got prep races to the Bing. You could look at a horse like Booth or Skelly shipping out the Del Mar earlier in the summer and then back for the Breeders' Cup there in the fall. Steve Asmussen loaded with sprinters. We've seen it before. We'll see which one turns out to be best by the end of the season. Skelly is back, and Booth is really on his game after his last 3. Now let's get to the Glamour division this time of year, the 3-year-olds. Our Triple Crown tracker, next up, topic 4 this week. We had one stakes race last week with Kentucky Derby qualifying points on the line. Not going to impact the run for the Roses, it doesn't look like, but Gosger got the victory in the Lexington Stakes at Keeneland. Maybe he's one to watch for the second half of the year, or as soon as maybe the Preakness.
Hypnus, third up on the far outside. Here's Preeter now trying to draw alongside of Bracket Buster. Hypnus third. Gosker is still fourth toward the inside. Bullard is fifth. They're at the quarter pole, still 6 lengths off the lead as they move off the far turn to the top of the short stretch. Here's Preeter right alongside of Bracket Buster. Then Gosker and Hypnus. Bullard has to go wide. Still 8 from the front. Preeter has the lead. Here's Gosker to the outside. Bracket Buster back toward the inside. And then Hypnus and Bullard still far back, and Gosker's got the lead in the final furlong of the Stone Street Lexington. Gosker and Irad Ortiz Jr. to win it.
Trainer Brendan Walsh doing good things early at the Keeneland meet and doing good things early in the career with Gosger. 3 starts now, 2 wins and a second-place finish. But it was a slow, late pace here in the Lexington Stakes. They did not come home fast. 25-28 for the 4th quarter, 6:60 through the last 16th of a mile, and they finished up at the 16th pole finish line. For Gosger to take on good competition at Triple Crown levels, he's going to have to finish much stronger than that. Several disappointments up and down the line in that race in the Lexington, too. I don't look at this race as having a big big impact on the Triple Crown Series. We'll have a couple Preakness preps to talk about this coming weekend, the Federico Tessio at Laurel Park, and then the Bathhouse Row Stakes, one of the newer stakes on the schedule at Oaklawn Park on Saturday. We'll take a look at some of the fields and some of the top contenders for those races coming up. And to the Tessio we go. It's the mile and an eighth race at Laurel Park. And of course, Laurel, the sister track to Pimlico. This isn't an apples to apples kind of prep towards the Preakness Stakes, but every once in a while we get horses that come out of this race and show up in the Preakness Stakes. We've got a couple Triple Crown nominees. 4 of them, in fact, entered in the Federico Tessio Stakes. Studley Do Right, a horse who was a good 2-year-old last year, won the Tremont, second in the Sanford. He's trying to get back on the beam after a 5th in the Virginia Derby for trainer Jerry Robb. Sacred Thunder's in there coming out of the private terms where he was outrun to the wire by Pay Billy. Pay Billy's kind of ascended to be the top horse in Maryland. Both of those horses from Maryland, Studley Do Right, Pay Billy, are Triple Crown nominated. Perhaps head on to the Preakness with a good effort in there. So that's a look at the Tessio Stakes. Let's switch to the Bathhouse Row. There are 4 Triple Crown nominees in this 1 mile and 1/8 race at Oaklawn Park. They're running for $200,000. Him drew the rail, and I think he's one that you might watch for the Preakness Stakes if he runs a good one. Ron Moquette's really high on this horse after an impressive debut win. He sent this horse into a allowance company going long. They get blinkers now for the first stakes. I thought him was kind of a sneaky behind-the-scenes horse, perhaps for the Arkansas Derby. They're taking a little more conservative path, but wouldn't be surprised if he runs well here, that Triple Crown nominee by McKinsey shows up in the Preakness Stakes. Same definitely for Caldera. I would think this horse will be Preakness bound with a good effort. A mile and an eighth for Caldera will be the longest test of this horse's career in terms of trying to get a victory. Has won up to a mile and a 16th, but has run the mile and an eighth trip beyond when running in the Louisiana Derby last time at a mile and 3/16. Didn't show much that day. Needs to get back on the beam for D. Wayne Lucas in that particular spot. Bob Baffert sends Tiz Secure in, a horse who is by Maximum Security, and out of the excellent race mare Tough Tiz's Sis. Those are some of the Triple Crown nominees to watch out for in the Bathhouse Row. This race also has the 3rd place finisher in the Louisiana Derby and Instant Replay, another by Maximum Security. Flavian Pratt rides there for Brad Cox. Flavian Pratt headed to Oaklawn on Saturday, so check out what he's doing. And we'll talk about Flavian Pratt next in the Triple Crown Tracker because he's probably the best jockey in America right now over the past year, and he doesn't have a mount for the Kentucky Derby at this point. We will see if he can jump on someone late and who might sneak into the field. Time to talk Bubble Watch in this year's Kentucky Derby. We mentioned at the top of the program that their horses are in the clubhouse, if you will. A lot of them already gathered at Churchill Downs, half of the 20 already on the grounds in Louisville. The other 10 will make their way there over the next 2 weeks or so. But as far as Flavian Pratt, he doesn't have a mount at this point. And where might it open up? I think an interesting one to keep an eye on would be Beza. Beza's been ridden by Hector Barrios, a jockey that John Sheriff has relied on for over time with this horse, Beza. But Beza right now needs a couple more defections to get into the Kentucky Derby field. The news today is that River Thames will not contest the Kentucky Derby. So the Bluegrass runner-up, or the Bluegrass 3rd place finisher, I should say, is going to skip the Kentucky Derby, maybe point to the Preakness Stakes. Not a race Todd Pletcher supports that often. So it'll be interesting to see if River Thames indeed shows up for the Preakness. But that's the aim now, according to Dave Grenig of Daily Racing Form, that they will bypass the Derby with River Thames. That brings number 21 into the list. If you're looking at the horses with points and qualifying for the Kentucky Derby, that would be Built. Built has had some distance questions in the last couple starts on the Louisiana Derby series. He's got the points now to play if they want to go. Wayne Catalano and the ownership group have some thinking to do. Part of the ownership group here with Built is the same as journalism, so there may not be the Derby fever to get in and be part of the experience because they already have the favorite for the Derby, part of that group, Eclipse Thoroughbred Partners. So be interesting to see what happens with Built if he decides to go in the Derby or not. Behind him is Neo Equus, the horse who was 3rd, the pace player in the Florida Derby for Saffie Joseph. He would certainly move forward if they get the chance to run. Sounds like they want to go. And then behind them would be Render Judgment for Kenny McPeek. We mentioned McPeek's not going to pass up an opportunity at one of these big spots the way it would seem. Render Judgment, you can make the argument he's kind of a come-from-behind horse, and the longer they go, the better. These kind of horses generally make their way into the Kentucky Derby because the distance will suit them. So I would think Render Judgment would probably go if that's the case. And now you look at right behind them would be Beza. Of course, Beza, the sharp runner-up of the Santa Anita Derby, behind Kentucky Derby likely favorite Journalism. He wasn't beaten that far in that race and ran a really good race despite being wide, despite being a little green, and he galloped out very well. So Beza would be a major player if he's able to get into the Kentucky Derby, and we shall see here. We've got all the way till next Saturday. They will enter the Saturday before the Kentucky Derby, is the entry date. Checking my calendar here, that means the 26th will be the Derby draw. So you've got till the 26th to enter the horses. And then even if you enter and you're on the also eligible list, you've got all the way till, I believe, 8 or 9 a.m. on Oaks morning, the day before the Derby, for horses to come out. So Baze is looking more and more like a horse who's going to get into the Kentucky Derby. I mean, just going off past history, there will be some horses that don't train well leading up and decide not to come. There's some horses on the grounds yet that may not end up coming for whatever reason. There'll be some physical issues, some sickness that typically happens leading up to the Kentucky Derby. If you're a fan of Beza, I think he'll get into the Kentucky Derby. Trainer John Sheriff says they're going to train like they're going, and they're going to get their big workout at Santa Anita coming up here shortly, and then they could get a work at Churchill Downs really the weekend before the race. So I would say on our Triple Crown tracker, definitely keep an eye on the bubble and keep an eye on Beza getting into the field. If he gets in, I think he's obviously one of the top 5-6 type contenders for the Run for the Roses. And again, nothing against Hector Berrios, and I'm all for loyalty for smaller time riders who don't get the big shot. But when you've got Flavien Prat out there, you've got a decision to make. And if Flavien doesn't have a mount yet and continues to not have a mount, and you can get Beza in, and you're one of the top 5-6 contenders to win the Kentucky Derby, I don't know how you let Flavien Prat sit in the jocks room or go onto another mount if you've got the chance to get him. So that'll be very interesting to see. Final news on our Triple Crown tracker today. This morning at Churchill Downs, the Arkansas Derby duo of Sandman and Cole Battle were both working out this morning. They got their first big works over the track leading up to the Derby. 49-3 for a half mile for Sandman. And as for Cole Battle, he went 5 furlongs in 101 2/5. So we've got half the field at Churchill Downs. We'll get more training video, pictures, analysis, and things like that as we get closer to the big race. But works this morning by Sandman and Cole Battle. And finally, we wrap up the show each and every week with our Stars of Tomorrow. This week, we've got one for you from Keeneland. If you're a fan of Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, you know Big Truz, the nickname of the quarterback. He wasn't wearing Lamar's number 8, but Big Truz looked awfully good. The son of Justify winning race 7 Saturday at Keeneland for Brian Lynch.
In between that pair, Big Truz to the lead. Fact is trying to get going late as they move by the 8th pole and goes to 2nd. Big Truz, though, has opened up by 3. Valiant Humor running from far back toward 3rd, well behind the leader, who's moving by the 16th pole. Big Truz, Luis Saez. They've got this one wrapped up. Big Truz to win it. It'll be Fact across the line in 2nd. Valiant Humor was home in 3rd.
Lots of pedigree to do more by Justify out of a Curlin mare. So looking forward to this one going longer. Look at the margins in this race. A 4-length victory for Big Truz, 9 lengths back to 3rd, and more than 15 lengths back to 4th in a big 11-horse field. Spread Eagle. That's usually the sign of a horse who's really got a future. Big Truz, our Star of Tomorrow. Let's wrap up our 5 topics this week on It's Official. The Goosebump Award went to Carl Spackler. He was a Star of Tomorrow on our show way back when. Now a Goosebump Award winner after his victory in the Maker's Mark Mile at Keeneland. Thorpedo Anna, is she still on target? Well, she's 12 for 12 in the exacta, 10 for 12 in the winner's circle, and a winner 2 times this meet at Oaklawn Park. But is she running as good as the superstar? Maybe not up to even her own lofty standards. Steve Asmussen's sprinters continue to shine and sparkle this weekend with Booth and Skelly. Skelly laid things off with a return allowance win on Friday at Oaklawn. Booth followed up with his 3rd straight victory at the meet when that 4-year-old son of Matoli won the Count Fleet Stakes. Asmussen loaded again. Maybe a 4th champion sprinter since 2009 is in his midst. As for the Triple Crown tracker, we looked at Gosker's uninspiring victory in the Lexington Stakes. We talked a little bit about the fields for the Tessio and the Bathhouse Road this weekend as potential Preakness preps. The Bubble Watch with River Thames now out, Built could be in. Neo Equus, Render Judgment, and Beza looking for a spot in the field. Maybe somebody's looking for Flavien Prat to pick up a mount. And as for the Stars of Tomorrow, Big Truz, the son of Justify, a dominant winner at Keeneland for trainer Brian Lynch. Those 5 topics are now official because my partner Jeff Siegel and I say so. That's how we do it, and we'll play it all again in 7 days' time here on the podcast. Between now and then, be sure to join us on Friday, where I'll have guest handicapper Scott Shapiro with me to handicap the weekend of racing that includes another good one at Oaklawn Park this weekend. It's Oaklawn Handicap Day on Saturday. It's also the 3rd Saturday of the Keeneland meet. Be sure to check out all of our information at expressbet.com and firstbet.com covering the big races between now and then. Have a great day, everybody.